With every new season, we also get a new batch of rookies, and last year, the rookie class was the strongest we have ever seen, with tons of them playing key roles on their teams, and not to mention Proper winning the MVP in his first year. The Season 6 rookie class is not nearly as deep as Season 5, but we still have some elite rookies here that will make waves through the league. These are my top 10 rookies to look out for. Also, before I get into this, Babel is not a rookie. He was a DPS player for London in Season 3. BJ joins the Valiant after sailing past the Sea of Blue and landing on the Shining Coast, only placing top 2 in relevant tournaments once Overwatch 2 dropped. He bounced around the scene a fair bit during this time, playing for Wisp, Odyssey, and Saints, while also competing for Northwood in Collegiate all the while. Relative to NA contenders, he had a very good Brigand Jotes, but he really came into his own on the Kiriko. The Valiant have no expectations on them this season, and CJ could be a bright spot on the team, especially if Kiri stays viable in the meta. I'm not expecting the world, but he should at least be fun to watch. Donghack is a pretty weird player. He played one season of Overwatch 1 with Runaway, did alright, and then disappeared for a year. Then he joined Talon and came second in Jotes, but a month and a half later during the Countdown Cup meta, with the same team, they couldn't even manage a win and did not make the bracket. In his most recent contender season, with Talon disbanded, the core of the team took their talents to Team A15, who ended up being the worst team in the season. Fast forward to now, and he's on one of the most stacked OWL rosters of all time. With that being said, the only thing I'm confident in is his ball gameplay. I haven't really been impressed by any of his other tanks at all. In the Pro-Am, he clearly had some growing pains with series losing errors and judgment, and was pretty clearly a step behind the rest of the star-studded Atlanta roster. Honestly, I think I'd only play him on ball and let Hawk handle literally everything else, and these feelings are amplified by my distrust in the Atlanta coaching staff to help his development as a player. Viper is a very new player to the competitive scene, and he's only just been scouted by O2 Blast last year. Literally all we've seen from him is his Genji and Jotes and some other scattered maps to stretch his legs against the weaker teams. Despite this limited playtime, it's clear that he's a threat and one of the absolute best Genjis in Korean contenders. So the biggest and most obvious question is, how good is he off of Genji? We have simply seen nothing to point towards how good he is on any other character in organized play. Did Moon really just pick up the 17-year-old version of Who Are You, or did he have a really nice Tracer in Trials that outperformed the likes of other top contenders flex DPS like Top Dragon or Spectra? I guess we'll know soon enough, but I really hope that we get a healthy dose of Genji this season to see him in his element. Sugar free.
You gon' die. You gon' die.
Lee Soo-min is a young flex support player who was in the Gen G system, but only broke into the high end of contenders last year on Sin Precinct Gaming. He shows a lot of promise and was one of the better flex support players in Korean contenders last year. The biggest thing I noticed about his game is that he's slippery and hard to lock down. On Seoul Korea this season, he's expected to be the starting flex support and seems to be largely overlooked on this roster. I don't expect him to be super crazy or anything, but I think he could have a sneaky good season, and with how wide open the East is, he could have a halfway decent shot to be the best flex support in the region. Prophet with the PH only played in contenders last year within the O2 system as a Widow specialist. His hard hit scan potential is insane, but he is a very unproven talent. He'll get a huge opportunity on the Dynasty in a relatively low pressure environment and should learn a lot while playing beside the legend Prophet. There really isn't too much to read in on because of his limited competitive experience, but his mechanical skill is the real deal, and he'll be a very fun player to watch, to say the least. With how high his skill ceiling is, he has low-key Rookie of the Year potential, but it's really hard to say, and there are so many other safer bets. Sugar free.
You gon' die. You gon' die.
Bliss is the hyped main support prospect of the year. He's developed in the O2 Blast system, he's flexible on all the main supports, and he's shown to have a very good Ana as well. With even more development under Rush to come, it's possible that Dallas won't miss Chio that much at all. Now, he's not as aggressive on Lucio, so it might be harder to feel his impact, but he's not particularly passive either, and knows when he needs to go on the offensive. Off of Lucio, I actually like Bliss more, as he's way more flexible and has looked better overall. Of course, main supports are very hard to judge, but Bliss for sure has Rookie of the Year level talent, but but he's just stuck on main support, so he won't win it. Sugar Free.
Are you an Overwatch League scout looking for the next rising star of your professional team? Look no further. Lenny, also known as Sugar Free to those who can't hang out with pros like him, is the 39-year-old prodigy you wish you would have known about sooner. He is best known for his exceptional Genji play, and is definitely tier 1 material. What are you waiting for? Get your budget Korean superstar today with Sugar Free.
Max is yet another O2 Blast player on this list, and the off-tank half of the demonic tank line they've fielded since 2021. All of his off-tanks are great, but his Sigma has a strong possibility of being the best in the league, and he was a premier Junker Queen player in Jotes. If that wasn't enough, he also has solid main tank flexibility. While it isn't on the same level as Junbin by any stretch of the imagination, if he was a solo tank in Owl, I would have no problem with it at all. And actually, I wouldn't be surprised if it was the Shock's plan before the age restriction was lowered. I am fully expecting Max to continue his dominance into Owl. He's probably going to see less playtime than Junbin just because main tanks tend to hang around the meta more often, but don't get completely swept away in the Junbin hype. Max is right there with him on his heroes. Sugar Free.
You gonna die.
When the age cutoff was lowered, everybody immediately thought of Junbin and how scary it would be that the Shock get him a year early. He's been a young tank prodigy on O2 Blast for a couple of years now, boasts possibly the best Wrecking Ball ever, and has great main tanks to go along with it. He is also completely comfortable on all the off tanks, so mid-round swaps are not a concern whatsoever. If we get a true Wrecking Ball meta, Junbin will be the Rookie of the Year and almost certainly a tank role star. Now that's a lot more debatable if Wrecking Ball has low meta impact, but his Winston and Doom were elite in contenders and looked quite good in Pro-Am despite being on 200 ping. It should be illegal for the Shock to have this much tank talent on one team, and if Krusty manages them both right, Max and Junbin will both be elite this season. Sugar Free is finally allowed to play in Owl after waiting for over 5 years. He most notably played for Atlanta Academy for 2 years back in 2018 when he was 13, and Owl teams had Academy teams. Even after he stepped away from the game for pretty much 2 years, he looked great during the Pro-Am. Let Bro get back into the flow of things and he is going to be so fucking good. Luckily for him, people don't expect too much from Vancouver this season, so it's a great place for him to play like a loose cannon and continue to grow as a player. I have some concerns with his Mei and his hit scan flexibility, but his Tracer, Genji, Pharah, and Hanzo all look great. He's clearly the star of the show and has Rookie of the Year potential most definitely. If anyone can win it over a Shock rookie, it's Lenny. Heesang is the DPS prospect to watch out for this season, and one of the only O2 Blast players here who wasn't just in their system. In 2020, he played on an Element Mystic with players like Choi Se-won, Helen, Ansun Jae, and MCD, and placed a very respectable 3rd or 4th place. In 2021, he played on Talon Esports with players like Talon Again, Krorong, and Vigilante, placing 2nd and only losing to an O2 Blast team featuring Proper. Then in 2022, he dominated contenders with many of the players mentioned above on O2 Blast, on picks like Tracer, Sojourn, and Genji. I truly believe if Proper didn't shake everyone's worldview to its core, Heesang would be revered as a legend in the making. He's found success everywhere he goes, and his Tracer is the real deal. 3 years ago, when he was a 15-year-old kid, in Tracer Sombra comps, he was forcing Choi Se-won onto Sombra. Since then, he's only had time to hone his game. I understand that in the Pro-Am, he didn't look like anything amazing, but I'm not going to hold 200 ping games at 4 AM above his head. Heesang is the safest pick for Rookie of the Year in my opinion. Overall, you can't go wrong with picking any of the Shock rookies to win Rookie of the Year, but it isn't clear-cut in the slightest with players like Sugar Free, Prophet, and maybe even Bliss in the mix. Let me know who you have to win Rookie of the Year in the comments down below, and as always, thank you so much for watching. Like and subscribe for more Overwatch League content. Have yourself a good one. Deuces.